The soldiers came home in triumph. They had burned the enemy's cities, taken his treasures, and marched them back across the empire, through every port, every market, every city gate. And in their baggage, in their lungs, in the crowds that cheered them home, traveled something the legions could not fight. Galen remembered it as a great pestilence. Historians now call it the Antonine plague, a modern name the Romans themselves never used, and counted among the most devastating epidemics of the ancient world. This is the story of the epidemic that struck the Roman world, and the emperor who, during those same troubled years, filled a private notebook with some of history's most intimate reflections on death. The year 165. Rome is winning a war in the east. Its legions, sent under the emperor's co-ruler, his adoptive brother, have pushed deep into Parthia, modern Iraq and Iran, and sacked some of its major cities. Later legend, told by the biographers, claimed a soldier broke open a sealed golden casket in a temple, and released the sickness from inside. Almost certainly a story, but it tells you how Rome felt about what happened next. Whatever its precise origin, the epidemic appears to have followed the soldiers and the trade routes west. City by city, port by port, garrison by garrison. By 166, it had reached Rome itself, one of the largest cities on earth, perhaps home to close to 1 million people, packed together in apartment blocks, sharing fountains, sharing bathhouses, sharing air. The perfect city for a triumph. The perfect city for a plague. We know something of what it looked like, because a doctor wrote it down. Galen, the most famous physician of his age, saw the sick with his own eyes, and described the disease with a physician's clinical precision: fever, intestinal distress, and an eruption across the skin that could darken, blister, and form scabs. Modern researchers have often suspected smallpox. Others remain unconvinced. Without biological evidence, certainty is impossible. What the surviving sources do convey is fear and severe disruption. The dead were carried out of the city in carts, so many that, the biographers say, the state had to regulate the funerals. Ancient accounts say thousands died, including members of the elite. The poor needed funerals at public expense. For Rome, disruption did not arrive in one dramatic moment. It returned in waves. A household might recover, only for sickness to appear again in another street, another barracks, another season. Funeral carts and public burials became part of the city's rhythm. Ordinary life continued, but always under the knowledge that the epidemic might return. People fled the city if they could afford to. Galen left Rome as the outbreak spread. He later presented the move as part of his professional plans, and critics have called it flight ever since. How many died across the years the plague kept returning? No ancient source could count it, and no modern historian can either. Some modern estimates reach several million deaths, but the evidence cannot support a precise total. Rome had reached across the world. Now the world's diseases had reached Rome. At the center of Rome's response stood the one man least able to look away. Marcus Aurelius, the reluctant emperor from our last story, had been on the throne for about 5 years when the plague reached his capital. Marcus did not remain in Rome throughout the epidemic, but he could not escape the responsibilities it created. He organized. The biographers recorded in dry lists: burials at public expense for the poor, strict rules for funerals. And with epidemic and frontier war straining the state at once, Marcus raised money partly by auctioning valuables from the imperial palaces. The auction you may remember from our last story. For beyond the plague, Germanic tribes were pressing across the Danube in the north. Marcus relied on his generals, but in 168, he and his brother also traveled north themselves. The northern campaigns offered no escape from that pressure. Marcus spent long periods away from Rome, working from military headquarters while reports, petitions, and military decisions continued to arrive. Ancient accounts portray him as physically frail, sleeping little and eating sparingly. The emperor responsible for holding the state together often struggled simply to keep his own body working. The cost kept coming. His adoptive brother, the man Marcus had made his partner in imperial power, died suddenly on the road back from the front. Ancient accounts describe a sudden illness, often interpreted as a stroke. Plague has also been proposed, but the cause remains unknown. Marcus buried him, honored him, and went back to work. There is no speech recorded, no grand gesture. Just a middle-aged man, often troubled by poor health himself, doing the next necessary thing, in a world that was quietly falling apart. And this is where the story turns inward. During that same long decade of recurring epidemic, frontier war and personal loss, Marcus wrote the private notes later collected as Meditations. At least part of the work was written on campaign. He was not composing a book for an audience. He was writing reminders to himself. One of them reads, "Since it is possible that thou mayest depart from life this very moment, regulate every act and thought accordingly. Not protect me. Not why me. But I may leave at any moment, so let every act count." In another passage, perhaps sharpened by the world of recurring death around him, though he never says so, he wrote of the doctors who could not save themselves. Think continually how many physicians are dead after often contracting their eyebrows over the sick. The physicians die. The astrologers die. The emperors die. That, Marcus reminds himself, is not a horror to hide from. It is simply the terms of the contract. And once you accept the terms, something can shift. Fear loosens its grip. The trivial falls away. What remains is today, the people in front of you, the work in your hands, the character you choose in this hour. The plague could fill Rome's funeral carts. What these pages refused to surrender was the hour he was actually living. He did not defeat the pestilence. No one did. He set down, line by line, how a person might refuse to be ruled by it. The pestilence stayed with the Roman world for years, fading and returning. In 180, after a brief illness on the northern frontier, Marcus died. Whether the epidemic caused his death is impossible to know. Historians still argue about what the plague did to the empire. Some say it broke Rome's golden age, others say Rome absorbed the blow. The evidence is thin, and honest scholars admit it. But it is worth being clear about one thing. The plague did not create Marcus Aurelius the Stoic. He had studied philosophy since youth. What epidemic, war, and loss gave him was an unforgiving setting in which those old exercises had to be practiced, or abandoned. And out of those years came a book. Not a book of despair. It is a book about getting up in the morning. About doing your work among difficult people. About holding grief without being destroyed by it. About dying, and therefore living, with your eyes open. Empires leave ruins. Pandemics leave graves. Those years left something stranger, a private manual for being human under pressure, written, in part, at a camp desk on a distant frontier. So what do we take from the plague years of Marcus Aurelius? His hardest exercise, and perhaps his most useful. A later phrase captures it, Memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as a morbid thought. As a filter. Tonight, or tomorrow morning, ask at once calmly, the way he did, if my time is genuinely limited, and it is, does the thing I am worrying about deserve today? Most worries do not survive that question. What survives is what matters. Marcus returned to that question during the hardest years of his reign. It can still cut through an ordinary Tuesday. Next time, as Julius Caesar rose through money, armies, and political power, one senator refused to bend. The story of Cato. Subscribe so you don't miss it.